Hello, and welcome to This Is Gonna Sound Weird. I'm gonna talk to you about crystal skulls. I don't know if you're familiar with crystal skulls, which are like crystals like granite or whatever, different stones, and they're carved into a skull shape. Duh, I eat crystal skulls. Well, let's go back to the late 80s. And I'm just gonna unfold this as I experienced it. Back to the 80s, I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I'm dragged out. I find myself dragged out and I'm looking at the earth. It's at a distance. So for me, I'm kind of a round earth person instead of a flat earther. But that truth could, like if there's a great argument about it, maybe I'll change. I don't know. But for the most part, I am a round earth person. I'm just going to stick with that story. And so I find myself looking at the earth. I'm out of body, and there's a voice, and it's a male voice, and I'm hearing it. But, for me, my experience is I'm observing the earth and I'm looking at it and I'm in awe. So this other voice, it's just kind of like, background noise until I kind of figured out that it was talking to me or he was talking to me. And it's like, what? You talking to me? You talking to me? And he was talking to me. And he's like, are you here for the classes? And I'm like, no, which is kind of my nightmare of being back in high school. And I don't remember my locker combination half the time or what classes I have to go to. And somehow or another, I'm going to have to find the office to get my schedule because I don't know where I'm supposed to go and what I'm supposed to do. Like, that's kind of how I was feeling. I'm like, what? And he's like, are you coming to the classes? So that's immediately where I went. I'm like, no. And he said, we have classes. I'm like, tell me more. He's like, we have classes at night. You can come and learn, la, 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 la. And I didn't know, learn about what. Anyway, so we're having this little conversation. And then he's like, oh, you don't believe me, do you? And I'm like, no, you're imaginary. And this is dream time. So uh, he's like, no, this is real. Here's my phone number, like like I don't know his phone number. So this is back in the, like I said, the kind of pushing the late 80s. So when I grew up, you would pick up a phone because it was like on the wall, it'd be like, and you would just dial the number and it was 7 digits. If it was a local thing. Otherwise, and local was huge. Like your whole county, a bunch of counties, unless it was like 100 miles up north or south or whatever, you had the same area code. You just punched in the numbers. Like, look at me. You did it on a wall. Imagine that. Um, and so he's telling me this phone number. And at this time, we're getting area codes. So he's telling me his area code. And I'm like, what's the area code? And he's like, California. I'm like, okay, dude, I don't think I have hands and pockets and pen and a paper. And I don't have a lot of short term memory at this point right now. And I can't really rename my digits because I could be like, oh, hello, pointer finger. You could be the number 3. I can't figure it out. I'm like, I'm not going to remember it, especially not in the morning. Maybe now for 2 minutes, but not in the morning. So he's like, oh, I'll give you my number or, give me your number and I'll call you in the morning. Well, back then, like I said, actually this was very progressive because we did have little boxes and, you could leave a voicemail on the box. And then years later, you could actually, very quickly, it was amazing. You could see the phone number come up, like caller ID. Whoa. And then after a while, the boxes kind of went away because it was all like Ma Bell. That's what the telephone company was, Ma Bell back then. Actually, just had these voicemails with a subscription to your phone line. I know, so archaic. I lived in the Stone Age. So anyway, he's telling me all this stuff. All right, fine. Let's go forward. And we're talking away. I'm like, don't know about these classes, blah, blah, blah. But I did get to encounter them later on. That's in my book. And as we're talking and debating, so I'm really realizing that this is realizing, really real. It's real because we're arguing. And typically in dreams, it's kind of, I don't know, you go along or it's awkward, but this is very much like 3D talking to somebody in line at the coffee shop, blah, 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 blah. Very real. And then all of a sudden I get zoomed out and I'm going through a vortex or a wormhole, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to say wormhole because I'm being brought to a different realm. So it's like, you know, it's like the best water slide at a water park. It reminded me of when I saw Contact with Jodie Foster. I'm like, oh, that's the shit I went through. You know, it's like, I'm okay. You know, isn't that what she was saying? Anyway, so I'm going through this wormhole and all of a sudden I land kind of like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz, right? Like, oh, hello, come out, whatever you are. Except for when I land after going through these lights and all of these spectrums, I land in a space of nothingness. It was completely black. Completely black. You've never seen so much black as this black. It's the darkest dark of the dark. And you know, I'm sure they've created rooms or maybe caves or something like that. And there is completely no sound. No sound. And no sound is deafening. No sound is deafening. And in fact, you can kind of go mad from no sound. They have no sound rooms and they actually have them in the Twin Cities. And people can't take them. My understanding is like, what is it, 10 minutes or half an hour or something? You just start to hear your heartbeat and you go mad, whatever. Okay. So I'm sitting there and here's the other thing I have to tell you. This vortex took me to the edge of space and probably time. Because there were no planets, no stars, no galaxy. It was black, as I said. There was nothing, no thing, no thingness. And I'm comfortable. You know, I'm warm, I'm comfortable. It's all good. But right in front of me, like right in front of me, are these points of light. And the points of light are in the shape of a skull. And I'm like so enamored of this, like wow, like look at this thing, this being. And right away, we're telepathically starting to communicate. And the communication is normal. Why do I say that? Because, you know, like if you watch what is it, the 10 Commandments or something like that, there's Charlton Heston and God's all like, oh, Moses, you know, like that's how God or big galactic entities are supposed to sound, like, whoa, like so huge. And that is not the case, because think about how we are. Are we like that? As above, so below. So if we're a bunch of dorks, entities in heaven can be that way. I'm not saying that all are. I'm just saying that they can be. And so we're talking, and this entity that's in the form of a skull is kind of dry. It's more of like an AI thing. It's more like, what are you doing here? How are you? Blah, 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 blah. It's, well, but no, because that kind of sounds like the computer in Star Trek. What are you doing here? Blah, blah. Okay. And there came a point in time that I asked it a question, and I said, how did I get here? Which I thought thought was a fairly good question, right? And it said intelligence, or no, because that still sounds like Star Trek. Um, intelligence, kind of more like that. And then, whoa, my mind exploded and zoomed out. And with that, because I'm going to tell you, this is how it happened in the minutes. Like, it said that, it said intelligence. My mind went quickly to what does intelligence mean? And then I was like, boom, sent back to bed. No wormhole, no vortex, no Jodie Fosterism, no contact. I just landed in bed and I literally bounced. I literally bounced on the mattresses, and it was like, oh, whoa. It was shocking. But then I immediately felt bad because that I asked it, how did I get here? Like, was that the wrong question? I don't know. And what does intelligence mean? Because I thought, your intelligence, my intelligence, because I'm like, you got way more intelligence than I got intelligence. Or do you mean intelligence like the CIA government type of intelligence? Or the army, military, the militia type of intelligence? Because those are like gathering information, right? That's what that means. So I kind of wasn't sure. Do you mean I'm smart? Thank you. But I was not in all AP classes or anything like that. And I do know I got a good IQ, but I'm not thinking I'm the most intelligent thing on the, if you're zooming around. So, no. And so I'm thinking it was intelligence gathering. And maybe it was my encounters with all of the entities I've encountered, all of the grays and the different species and the ghosts and heaven and angels makes me peculiar or weird. And maybe it was just kind of like checking me out. Like, why are you so weird, you wild woman? Anyway, so that's it. Actually got to meet a crystal skull. And then, years later, well, then I saw it on a Leonard Nimoy thing. I can't remember what his show was. This is probably in the 90s. And then I called up, because my true girlfriends know my story and how weird I was. I was like, oh, snap. Crystal skulls are real. Like, come over. You got to see this show with Leonard Nimoy. And, they were talking about the crystal skulls that have been found around the planet over the decades or something like that. And then there's some report that there's a missing crystal skull. I'm like, oh, how do you know? Like, what? Was it? There should be 13 crystal skulls. I mean, I don't know. How did they know this? And then there was like this whole, who's the dude? Raiders of the Lost Ark. What's his butt? And then like his last movie was it called like Finding the Crystal Skull or something like that? Raiders of the whatever. And so the last movie was Finding the Crystal Skull. I don't even know. So Indiana Jones, and it's the final scene, and there's like all these like huge stone beings sitting in these thrones. This is epically how his movies wrap up, or those movies. And one of them had a missing head, and then they put the missing head on the body, and then all of a sudden, all the stone beings, which I write about in my book, because a lot of stone is crystal quartz, right? Which you might not think a stone being could get up and move around, but anyway. So these beings all like, come to life. And then they come together, they congeal. And then they make like one big, huge, gray alien. I'm like, you're like, how did I guess? And then there's some spastic spaceship, and then they fly off, right? But I'm like, why is Hollywood showing us this with this crystal skull? What does it mean? And while I appreciate the crystals, so there's these crystal skulls around the planet that have been found, and people are researching them and saying, oh, there's all this intelligence in these crystal skulls. And I don't know if that's true. I don't know what to make of it, but I'm just presenting to you my experience. And maybe it's a key to all the skulls that were carved and found around the planet, and all the people that found them, and all the people that connect with them. I don't know. I can't tell you about that or there. All I can tell you about who and how I am and what my experience is. So I feel like it was collecting information and checking things out. Now, was it a law? Or, I don't know what kind of being it was. I don't know. And I don't know if we'll ever find out what kind of being it was or what it was doing. But I'm going to tell you the weird thing was that I know it was in space. And I know that it was at the edge. So what that says to me is like, you know how we have the Milky Way in our galaxy and like zooming all around and all this kind of stuff? But what if that's compartmentalized and then there's a whole nother, right? There's a whole nother, which I totally am on board with, because I think about the Demodex, or whatever, like the bugs on my face. Do they know that they're living on my face? Does an amoeba know where it's at? So we sit and judge size. Oh, okay. But the truth is, it's all in relation to where you're at. And maybe I'm just gonna stop with that joke. Thank you. Time to go.